Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishpad Paramahamsa, Parivajikacharya, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Parivajikacharya, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 17th day of March 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace HG Dravida Dasa. And we are in Canto 5, Chapter 14, text number 16, if I have it right. Okay. And Narayana Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Mudiriyet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. I'm sorry? Govardhan told me 16. I don't know. Nashtaprayasha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil. And loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right. Is it 17 or 16? What do you think, Vijay?
16,
Tapas, what is it?
16.
16? 16. Okay, here we go. I'll stand it myself. Kvachat kala vishamita raja kula rakshasa parita priyatama danasuhu pramataka eva vigata jiva lakshana aste. All right, I'll read the translation. Government men are always like carnivorous demons called rakshasas, man-eaters. Sometimes these government men turn against the conditioned soul and take away all his accumulated wealth. Being bereft of his life's reserved wealth, the conditioned soul loses all enthusiasm. Indeed, it is as though he loses his life. Purport. The word Raja Kula Rakshasa is very significant. Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled about 5,000 years ago, yet government men are referred to as Rakshasas, or carnivorous demons. If government men are opposed to a person, that person will be bereft of all his riches, which he has accumulated with great care over a long period of time. Actually, no one wants to pay income taxes. Even government men themselves try to avoid these taxes. But at unfavorable times, income taxes are exacted forcibly, and the taxpayers become very morose. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So, what's the title of this chapter, Vijay? The material world, the forest of material enjoyment. And yet every verse describes how things are happening that are not enjoyment. Just the opposite, isn't it? We're learning all kinds of ways in which this material world is anything but the forest of enjoyment. So there's kind of a sarcastic, ironic title. So here are the government men. And so much of the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita we see is concerned with and describing proper means, proper rule of the world by actual saintly devotees. Thank you. The entire Kurukshetra war was fought for that reason. Krishna was very concerned that the Pandavas rule the earth. Why? Because they're personifications of Dharma. In fact, Yudhishthira is also known as Dharmaraj because he's son of Yamaraj. And all of them were saintly leaders. And yet, by some intrigue, the kingdom had been stolen from them, and the conspiracy was to eliminate them so that there would be no threat. You know the story. So Krishna says, Dahi dahi dharma saglana bhavata bharata abhyutanam dharma tadatmanam sajamiham. Whenever there are discrepancies in dharma in the world, and that's very prominent in Kali Yuga, and we're even just before Kali Yuga was threatening to come. I advent myself, I descend. I protect the devotees, I annihilate the demons, and I reestablish dharma. So what is being described in this allegory, and what is being described here, is what we face without that dharma, when dharma is not ascendant in the world, and when the people who are ruling are simply rakshasas. How do they get to be rulers? They get to be rulers by climbing on the back of everyone else, intrigue. It can come to the point of murder. And finally, they get to be the leaders, and these are the especially in Kali Yuga, this is what you have. So, who are the Rakshasas? We read the demonic qualities in the 16th chapter. Asatyam apatishtam te jagadahu anishadam apataspadasambhutam kimanyat kama hoitikam. This is the first full verse describing the demons. So the first thing is they declare there's no God in control, because they want to be God. Right? We studied the life of Hiranyakashipu the past time. He was extremely upset when Prahlad recommended that he surrender to Hari, that who happened to have killed his brother Hiranyaksha, and who is the real God. He wanted to be God himself. This is the ultimate motive of the demons, is that they want to be the supreme. And so they convince themselves, that there is no supreme. Asatyam apatishtam te. This means that they declare there's no ultimate truth. There's no God in control. Jagadahu anishwaram. Then how did everything come about? Just by chance. By chance meeting combination of molecules over many trillions of years, all of this stuff comes about. It's a nonsense theory. It is. But they convince themselves of that therefore there's no God. They can do whatever they want. And we also tend to get into that mode. As soon as you forget that there is a God, or you become convinced that there is no God, it means ultimately there's no ultimate morality. And you can do whatever you want, whatever you can get away with, isn't it? And so Prabhupada mentioned at the end here that no one wants to pay taxes. So even the person who is an ordinary person working, he's trying to figure out how he can get around paying this tax or that tax. And the more money you have, the more elaborate means you have of tax shelters and all this kind of thing. There's a whole state in America now which is a tax shelter. I think it's South Dakota. Is that there's so much money, people will put their money in our banks if we can, fudge the taxes somehow. So this is going on. So here, in the translation, the verse itself, it's specifically how the government will confiscate your wealth unlawfully. These government men, they turn against the conditioned soul, and they take away all this accumulated wealth. So there's all kinds of ways they can do that, by increasing the taxes or making things taxable that weren't taxable before, rather than just out-and-out confiscation, which also happens sometimes. And we find, if you study or read about some of these extremely wealthy people, the real demons who have got billions and billions of dollars, they have all kinds of schemes. They hire lawyers who are just known as tax lawyers, who are finding different ways lawfully how you can pay less tax. What to speak of, putting the money abroad somewhere in some bank like Switzerland was famous for that. Right? The Swiss bank account, no names, just numbers on the account, right? Still is now. Yeah, still doing that. And a lot of it is just to escape taxes. So this is another part of the material world that makes it unpleasant. This would be in the category of adibautic miseries, other living beings giving you miseries, right? And so that's very prominent. So the whole idea of this whole allegory is that we shouldn't want to stay here, because you can't be happy and peaceful in this world, surrounded by rakshasas, surrounded by people who are trying to cheat you. Even the family life is corrupted. Your own parents will torment you, or you'll turn against the parents. There's even up to the point of murder sometimes. It's just a conflagration. It's a holocaust. I think Bhaktivinoda uses that word. I'm trying to enjoy this holocaust. This is the fallacy of material life, is that there's miseries at every step, there's dangers at every step, and yet you try to eke out some pleasure, some sense pleasure, gross or subtle, and in this way forget the actual situation, that your life is hanging by a string, that at any moment there could be a pandemic, and suddenly even the air you breathe can be lethal. You know, this is all over the world. This is a reality. Now, we're convincing ourselves that it's over, but is it really over? There's a new variant coming at us now, Omicron. That's not Omicron. What do they call it? Omicron? I forget. A variant of Omicron. So this is part of the teaching of the lessons that we're meant to learn in this material world. Now, if we don't know anything else, then we're stuck. Then we have to try to navigate this material world and convince ourselves this is all there is. But this is what Prabhupada came to give. No, there is a whole other world. Go back home, back to Godhead. In other words, get out of here. Don't aspire. You can't be happy here. And that basic desire, which is universal, to find that place of actual peace and happiness, is we're taught in the books and by Srila Prabhupada personally and the whole line of acharyas that yes, it exists. We can't perceive it with our present senses, but it definitely exists, and we're perceiving it, and we can tell you, and all the acharyas in the Bhagavatam, the Mahajans, you know, the whole idea is to convince us. I listen to lectures every day, and Prabhupada is talking about. Today it was, I think, the simple fact of the soul and transmigration of the soul and eternal life, you know. But it's not something you can perceive, you know. That's famously in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, no, you can't. Ashtayavat pashyati kashtadenam. Some hear about the soul and they're amazed. Some don't believe in the soul because you can't see it, you can't measure it with our present senses or our instruments. So how do we get knowledge of that? There's only one way. You have to go to the source of knowledge of the transcendence. Transcendence literally means beyond the range of your senses and mind. That's what transcendence means. So how are we going to perceive it with our senses and mind? You can't. You can only perceive it through hearing from the proper source. And so therefore you can see how faith is the foundation of everything. You have to have faith in that source. And Srila Prabhupada was able to implant that faith. That one very important aspect of the Bhakti Lata Bija. Bhakti Lata Bija means the seed of the creeper of devotion. Now why is it a creeper? Because it's growing desire. This is what it is. And there are so many other seeds in there, bijas. There's a purport all about this in the 19th chapter of Madhya Leela. It's worth reading. That desires for this, desires for that, kama bij, karma bij. You know, I need to go to this school. I remember when I was in junior in high school, that's when I think you mostly try to apply to school, right? It says, oh, you know, if I can just get into Harvard. You know, I applied to Harvard. I didn't get into Harvard, you know, but I got into another school. Okay, I'll go there. You know, your whole life the course of your life is dependent on what school you get into. So these are bijas. When you're a freshman in high school, it says, oh, okay, I'm going to really study because I want to get into Harvard. You know, so it's a desire seed, and it grows, and then if it doesn't fructify, you don't get in. You can be very disappointed. So this is the material world. All kinds of seeds of desire are within our hearts, and they're growing. They're weeds. We have to pull those out by not watering them, by not thinking about them and trying to fulfill the material desires, but rather water that Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of Bhakti, which it fructifies into pure prema. When you think about prema, is this constant, intense desire to do what? To please Krishna. That's what ultimate love is to take pleasure in the pleasure of the beloved. And that pure desire, when directed toward Krishna, is the ultimate goal of life. So, but it begins with that planting of the seed of a very essential part of which is faith, because you can't see it with your own life. And that's why the acharya, the guru, the spiritual, is so important, because they can give you an example of someone who is already realized, who's experiencing it. And they open your mind to the existence of this whole different world and this whole different way of living that doesn't depend on gratification of the senses, doesn't depend on accumulating a lot of wealth so you can feel secure and gratify your senses, and in fact depends on giving up those desires and living as simply as possible. Here we see another aspect of this field of the field of material enjoyment, so to speak, in which you're put upon by the authorities in so many ways. And depending who you are, devotees who face this, they've been thrown in jail, and Prabhupada would encourage them, you just chant in jail. Krishna will take care. Even in the earliest days, Kirtananda was put into a Bellevue for observation by his parents because they thought he'd gone crazy. And he was chanting in there, Prabhupada said, and he was an example of someone who tolerated and came out and wasn't damaged. So that's what this is all about. So I'm going to go on unless there's questions or comments on this particular verse. Okay. I'll read the Sanskrit for 17. Kadachin. Notice how every verse begins with sometimes. So these things don't happen constantly, but at one time, something like this is happening at all times. Kadachin manorato bhagata pitrapita mahad yasat sadati swapna nivriti lakshanam anubhavati. Sometimes the conditioned soul imagines that his father or grandfather has again come in the form of his son or grandson. In this way, he feels the happiness one sometimes feels in a dream, and the conditioned soul sometimes takes pleasure in such mental concoctions. Purport: due to the ignorance of the real existence of the Lord, the conditioned soul imagines many things. Influenced by fruitive activity, he comes together with his relatives, fathers, sons, and grandfathers, exactly as straws gather together in a moving stream. In a moment, the straws are thrown everywhere, and they lose contact. In conditional life, the living entity is temporarily with many other conditioned souls. They gather together as family members, and the material affection is so strong that even after a father or grandfather passes away, one takes pleasure in thinking that they return to the family in different forms. Sometimes this may happen, but in any case, the conditioned soul likes to take pleasure in such concocted thoughts. And this whole religion is based on this idea. When you die, you rejoin your family, and right, and Uncle Joe will be there, But I hope not Uncle Sam, because there's so many so many struggles within the family, isn't it? So this is another way in which the conditioned soul convinces himself that the material world is his home and a place of happiness. So we should. The whole idea of this allegory and so many parts of the Bhagavatam is to completely convince us that this is not our home, this is not a place of enjoyment, but there is such a place, and we should follow the rules and regulations and process to get there. And the wonderful thing is, okay, family life, but isn't family life so prominent in the spiritual world, in Krishna Lila, in Goloka Vrindavan? Krishna's family, and the whole cowherd community is like one big family. And it includes the cows. Krishna very much loves those cows, isn't it? He goes out, and they're wandering, of course. You can imagine the responsibility of having the herd. Was it 100,000 cows? At least 900,000 cows. That's a lot of cows. And he had names for every one of them. There's verses about that. Madanga mukidum malay shabale hangsi bangsi priye. This is verse. And some of these are names of categories of cows, groups of cows. And some of the cows are madanga-mukhi, means that their mouth is shaped very much like a madanga, you see. And others have especially beautiful udders, so they're named for the udder and colors and so many things. So when it's time to go back from the forest, he doesn't want to leave any cows. So he has a mala. There's 108 different groups of cows, and he's chanting and the names of the leader of those groups. And until all of them are gathered, and he comes to the 108th bead, he doesn't return until this is how it's described in the 35th chapter of the 10th canto, part of the songs of the gopis. And So, but family life on the material side, there's some pleasure there, obviously, otherwise no one would stay in the family. But it's such a hazardous situation. First of all, the person who you love so much, it could be your child, your wife, your husband, any of them, can die or get very ill, and it's tremendous feeling of loss if someone like that happens. Because attachment is there. This is what's going on in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is so attached to especially to his grandfather figure, Bhishma Dev, who took care of them when they were children and bereft of their father, Pandu. He showed a lot of love. And Dronacharya, his teacher. But there were all other kinds of relatives and friends on the other side. This is family affection. And he couldn't imagine killing them. He couldn't imagine trying to enjoy the kingdom after they'd all been killed, and he'd been a big part of the being killed. It would be soaked with their blood. How is he ever going to enjoy it? He says, even if I got a sovereignty like that of the demigods in heaven, it wouldn't mitigate the horror of having killed my dear relatives. So he was representative there. Krishna covered him, so he would represent normal material affection, which is completely abnormal for the soul because it's dependent on the body. The body is artificial construct, and we identify with it. And it's scary because it keeps changing, When you get old, the skin becomes creped. They say the crepe skin. Well, that's not attractive. Well, how can I fix it? So let me Google that. Oh yeah, there's so many remedies. Okay, so you get caught in that, spending money on that, meditating on your own body. It's a tragic situation for the soul, really. We're meant to meditate on Krishna's flawless, beautiful, ever youthful body. And that really gives us pleasure, just to think about it. What to speak of serving Krishna like that and glorifying him in that way. And then you don't care. Who cares? Now I got wrinkles. All right. Prabhupada describes that. He's in Bombay, and this is the series of lectures, wonderful lectures he's giving in Bombay, and made into a book called The Teachings of Lord Kapila Dev. And it's right in the middle of the struggle to get the land, And that Prabhupada refers to that in the talks. We've come here trying to give people Krishna consciousness, and then this really got them. Where there was reports, there were complaints to the police against the devotees for the chanting in the early morning being a nuisance. And that probably just got in it. Just see, here in the land where is the home of Hare Krishna, where Bhagavad Gita was spoken, and just see how far we've come since independence. Just see the fun, Prabhupada said, just see the fun. So there's so much struggle, and but he took on that struggle because he knew that people needed this. That these temples are oases where people can come, just like this wonderful festival yesterday. Devotees gather. Lord Chaitanya's appearance and Lord Nityananda's appearance are the high points of my year, and of course Janmashtami, but those two especially. And we could see how it's a place where people can gather, glorify the Lord, hear about, see the beautiful deities and the Abhishek, and hear glorification of Lord Chaitanya. And so many people become blissful by that. What's the big expense? You just have to show up, and take your seat, and hear and participate, and then take the free prasadam. And do you really need to go to the bar and get intoxicated? You can become intoxicated with Hare Krishna. We read that in the books, but it's not really toxicated. It's not toxic. We have that name. It's not poisonous. It's actually the antidote to the poison of material consciousness. So Prabhupada came and he gave this, and basically no one knew anything because the books weren't even out. There was those 3 books, and not everyone could get them and read them. But if you throw yourself into the chanting and the prasadam and the glorification, there's a real experience there. There's something real and substantial. And that gives you, that nourishes your faith and your determination. And when the book started coming out, the magazine was there from practically the very beginning. And so Prabhupada was preaching through that. And So in this way, the reality, the truth, the absolute truth is Krishna consciousness, is the spirit. The relative truth, which is not true at all, which is constantly changing, is matter, asat. And this asat, just hearing the prayers of Queen Kunti, why did Krishna appear? She's saying, well, some say you did this, some say you did this. And then she comes to the conclusion. Bhavesmin klishyamananam avidya kama karmabi shavanas smaranahani kadishaniti kechana. Prabhupada really liked this verse. He said this first line is a source of great investigation for the scientists. So what does it mean? This word bhava, very important. Bhava means the changing, ever-changing world, the asat, birth, death, old age, disease. Bhavesmin, this world of birth and death, klishyamananam, causes so much suffering because of avidya, because of ignorance. People don't know the chant Hare Krishna. Kama karma be, and they're so enwrapped in trying to fulfill the material desires and performing fruitive activities. Kama karma be. This is in 2 lines describe the whole material world. So what's the way out of it? To hear shavana, smadanahani, kadishaniti. In order to revive the hearing of the pure sound vibration of the Vedic literatures, and which results in remembrance and worship. And Arhani means to worship the deity and worship Krishna in so many ways. To revive that practice, you appeared. And we see, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he does that. And not only as Krishna, but also Vyasadeva is an incarnation of Krishna, the author of all these books. So the very next verse is such a wonderful verse, where she's describing Queen Kunti, is a great acharya really. Shinvanti gayanti gunantne bhikshnasa smaranti nandanti devehitang jana taheva pashyant ashidena tavakam bhava pravaho padamam padambujam. Here's that word bhava again. Here is described to a great river pulling you along, the river of time, with birth, death, old age, and disease. So here she says, thus you came, revived the process of hearing and remembering and worshipping, and those who shrinvanti, that's hearing again, shrinvanti and gayanti. Who can say what gayanti means? Singing, yeah, glorifying. So hearing and chanting, and remembering. Shrinvanti gayanti, and gunanti, accepting the process, abhikshnasa, constantly, and then smaranti, remembering. Nandanti, taking pleasure in remembering and doing all these things. What's the subject matter? Tava ihitam jana. Those persons, ihitam means your pastimes, and includes name, form, qualities, all the things that we glorify Krishna for, and the associates of Krishna. What's the result of that? Taheva pashyant achidena tavakam. For not too long. Doesn't take too long if they really become serious. Achidena. They see bhava pravaho padamam padamajam. They see your lotus feet, and seeing your lotus feet, gradually they see everything. What is the effect? Bhava pravaho padamam. The powerful course of a river. Just imagine there's a river of time, and what's going on? Birth, old age, disease, and death. Birth, old age, disease, and death, again and again and again. So this is called bhava pravaha, and it is stopped. It ceases. Uparamam. It's stopped by this process of hearing, chanting, remembering, glorifying, worshiping Krishna. That's bhakti. That's the process Prabhupada came to give. And we have so many books that describe that, primarily Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is why Krishna came, this is why Prabhupada came, and this should be our mission too. To dive into that process wholeheartedly, and to give it to others, to attract others to come to the process. And if we present Krishna nicely, if we're Krishna conscious ourselves, and we present Krishna nicely, he's all attractive. Then those who are fortunate will be attracted to investigate the process further and take part in it like that. This is what our whole life should center on. And in that way, we can feel the nectar of Krishna consciousness, and, the government may cheat us out of some taxes. That's not your life. Oh my God, they took all my money. Now I can't enjoy. The great devotee said, "Oh, this is unfortunate. Just what does Lord Krishna say? Lord Krishna said to Yudhishthira, "Yasyaham anugunnami harishe taddanam shanai." that for those I show my real mercy, I gradually take away all their wealth. Here it says the demon Rakshas, the government official, they take off your wealth, you become miserable. But if you're a devotee, but you're kind of, you're dragging your heels a little bit, Krishna takes it away, so there's nothing else you can do. Hare Krishna. You have to take shelter. So that happens sometimes. So anyway, that's and here he's talking about how this whole family business is no more significant than straws coming together in some river and then going apart. I remember reading this analogy, if you recall, at the beginning of the second canto, when Shukadev Goswami is answering Maharaj Parikshit's first question, most important question: what should one hear about? What should one think about? What should one do at the time of death? And Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that we all may be at that point. You don't know how long you're going to live, actually. So we should have that urgency. But he had noticed 7 days, so he asked a question. And Shukadev, very concisely, I made a recording of it. It's like 10 verses or so. He answers the question, the essential question. But in the purport, in one of the verses there, Shukadev is describing the materialists, how they have soldiers, defenses against the incursions of the material energy. So they're called fallible soldiers. What are those soldiers? Deha patta kalatvadi shatva sainyeshva sattvapi tesham pamato nidadam pashyan apina pashyati. This is a very significant verse. So the first line of defense is your own body. Kind of keep it healthy and strong. I can do so many things to ward off dangers, right? So there. But I also have the wife. She helps also. And the children. The Kalatra is the wife, and Patra are the children. So I have so many sons, they can help me. Yeah, but the Kaladradish, Atmasainya, Adishu means etc. That comes the bank account, the insurance policies, whatever, Guns, I have a whole panoply of guns, no one's going to hurt me. So they're called a satsu, means that they're fallible soldiers. In other words, you're putting your faith in them, but they really can't protect you. But if someone is so much intoxicated with the material consciousness, tesham pramato, he's pramata, not just mata, but pramata, completely mad, seeing historically that your grandfather has died and others have died. Tesham pramato nidanam, even though they've been destroyed, and he sees that they're destroyed, he doesn't see. This seeing without seeing is important. We see so many things, but we really see with our intelligence. If we see something that we don't understand or don't understand the truth of, we'll apply something that we know to that, but it's really not accurate. And so even though we see that our grandfather has died, we're still thinking, well, this will protect me. You're not actually seeing. It doesn't impact you properly. Pasyanapina pashyati. So there's no defense on the material side. We're just completely helpless. Eventually, time is going to take away all our strength, take away all our fallible soldiers, and you're helpless against the material energy. So where is our shelter? Krishna's lotus feet. Samashitaye padapallavaplavam mahatpadam punyayasho marhari bhavambudevatsapadam padam 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 yad vipadam natesham. Here's that word bhava again. I was thinking of all the ways it's compared. Bhava Sindhu, the ocean. If you're in the middle of an ocean, that's danger. Bhava Sagar is the same. Bhava Mahadavagni, Lord Chaitanya says, first line of the first verse, the great forest fire of bhava, of birth and death, you see. And here is Bhava Pravaha, is like a very powerful river that's just pulling you along. So the idea is it's a place of danger where you're helpless materially. But here in this verse it's described as an ocean. So he says, Samashita ye padapallavaplavam. What do you need in an ocean to be safe? A boat, all right? A really trustworthy boat. So here it says, those who take shelter of the boat of Lord Krishna's lotus feet. Samashita, fully shelter. Don't hedge your bets. Samashita ye padapallavaplavam. The plava is a boat and pallapallava is his lotus. plavam, mahatpadam, those feet where the whole Mahatattva rests, the whole universe rests on it, or it can mean where all the Mahatmas take shelter. There's two meanings to this. It often is, Punya Yasho, Murari. Murari is the enemy of the Mura demon. And Punya Yasho means just by glorifying him, you get pious credits. In your Bhakti account. It's not some material account. This is your Bhakti account. There's put the punya, that's bhaktyun mukti sukriti. Sukriti is the activity that gives you punya. So punya murari. Then bhavambudir vatsapadam. That ocean of bhava turns into the water in a calf print of the hoof print of a calf. Not even a cow, a small calf, which you can just walk over. You don't need a big boat anymore. Bhavambudir vatsapadam. Parampadam, you're already a resident of the supreme abode, if you really take shelter. Even while physically resting here, you're residing there actually. Padam padam nad vipadam natesham. Not for them is this place where there's danger at every step. And we should really see this world like that. And be calling out to Krishna. That's what chanting constantly means. You're constantly calling out to, please save me, please keep me safe at your lotus feet. Please let me not forget you. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. That's our shelter. And that's the advantage of Kali Yuga, because it's so bad that it's obvious to anybody with half a brain that we need that shelter, isn't it? Whereas if you're in a Satya Yuga, hey, I'm good. I can live 100,000 years. Everybody's peaceful and quiet. What to speak of the heavenly planets? Where's the urgency to get out of the material world? We're doing okay, until your punya runs out and you get thrown down into the Martya Loka, the world of birth and death. So we have all this knowledge, and we have the instruction of how to practice devotional service. All it takes is, on our side, the determination. I've been reading in the evening now the Gita. We're in the second chapter, and that Vyavasayatmaka Buddhi verse, I think it's 40 in text 2, in chapter 2. That's the one point of determination of the intelligence, Vyavasayatmaka Buddhi. Otherwise, if you get diverted, your intelligence is many-branched, and you go here, go there, and you never really progress. So that determination to practice devotional service and get out of this material world. And this, these extended descriptions should give us plenty of impetus. And if we're not convinced, then we'll read the latter chapter, the next few chapters after we get, the hellish planets. Oh my God, I really want to get out. Okay, we've come to 6:30, 8:30, 8:32. Any questions or comments? Local or
I have a question.
We have a local comment or question. I'll call on you, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you very much.
There's the mic there.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Bol.
Is this conversation is still happening between Maharaj Rahuguna and... No.
This is now Shukadev speaking to Pariksit. Pariksit was wondering about the intricacies of the allegory, because it wasn't fully explained. So he's explaining the conversation between Rahuguna and Jadbhat.
I see. So, in this regard, because Pariksit Maharaj is, in one sense, or was a king, and here Shukadev Goswami is talking about government men, which is referring to royalty in one sense. So here Pariksit Maharaj has left all of that, but here Shukadev Goswami is saying something which can, to a normal person, seem like a strong statement, like a kick in the chest, because they are that type of that is their occupation. So similarly, like sadhus can say very strong, not sarcastic, but sometimes very strong statements, especially when they know where we are coming from, and at that time we can lose enthusiasm. So how does one not lose enthusiasm when a sadhu says something sharp, especially when they know our certain?
Okay, it's a good question, but I think the first part is actually inaccurate in the sense that yes, Parikshit was a government man, but notice the word Krutchit. Actually, every verse begins with Krutchit. Sometimes it doesn't mean all the time. And Parikshit was anything but that. I mean, he was a genuine saintly Kshatriya. He wasn't just a Raja, he was a Rajarshi, Raja Rishi, and a great devotee. So, and that's why even his disrespect for Shamika Rishi, was it? I think he garlanded with the snake. What is it? Then he felt very bad about that, and it describes in at least two verses that I remember how this was completely unusual for him. It wasn't something that he ordinarily did. Just that little disrespect for this, because he was thirsty and he wasn't respected because he was in samadhi. This samadhi is sometimes a very hazardous position, because you find that you're not responding, and sometimes the Brahmins come and you can't give them proper respect, and so they take offense. But anyway, so. It was unusual, for him to do that. So I don't think that Parikshit, is feeling chastised here. But that's often happens, is that we do something out of the course of devotional service, and really, if you're a sincere devotee, you feel that as a great blessing, that the spiritual master cares about you enough to chastise you. In other words, he's giving you attention because he knows that you can take it properly, and we know that we need that kind of instruction and that kind of correction. This is as I mentioned. We had this in a recent class. This Tattenu Kampam verse, Tattenu Kampam Susamikshramana. This is when the attitude that a real devotee has when something bad happens to him. Right? Tattenu kampam susame bundana evatmakritam vipakam. That he's always seeing the Lord's mercy both in the so-called good and the so-called bad things that happen to him. If something happens to you that is a reversal, some disease or some injury, or you lose some money or something, then just like that verse, that you see it as Krishna's mercy because you were attached to the money. And it was an impediment on your progress. So Krishna took it away and made you, surrender. Or you break your leg, or you had some injury, or something happens, and you see, Krishna, it could have been so much worse. The leg will heal, and Krishna's so kind, he minimized it. We first heard this. I remember in Brooklyn because there was a lot of devotees, and there was a lot of work that needed to be done in the kitchen. Chopping up, different, and there would be cuts, just like we have our first aid kit right in the kitchen because they know that something will happen, may happen. So you think, yes, I cut my finger, but I was supposed to lose the finger or lose the hand. Krishna is so kind; he minimized it. I had this in my background in karma. This is Krishna's managing the karma. And then on the other side, when good things happen, one of your family members died and you get an inheritance. Said, "Oh, Krishna's given me a chance to do some service." He's so fortunate. So it's not just, now I can really enjoy, but this is a chance to do better service. So notice that in both situations, the positive attitude toward Krishna remains and is nourished by that. So where is there a circumstance that's not going to enhance your bhakti? So the same thing is true, and the spiritual master says, you nonsense? What are you doing? You shouldn't do like that. This is out of the realm of devotional service. It's not that he says, get out, you violated such and such principle, no more mercy. They're caring for us. And so that care is manifest, just like a parent. A mother will chastise the child, even when we have Krishna's Leela with the Damodar Leela, and out of love. So one has to be, and the really advanced, spiritual master will see, well, this devotee can take it, therefore I'll do it. If you see it doesn't, then they deal with it in a different way. The chastisement won't be so severe, or whatever. So that's how we should feel if we get chastised. That what was that pastime? We heard it last night. wasn't it? When did we hear that about it? Yeah, this morning, yesterday morning. Vijay was recounting how Advaitacharya, he was disappointed. He didn't want to be revered by Lord Chaitanya. He wanted to be Lord Chaitanya's servant. So he hit upon this wonderful idea of preaching Mayavad because he knew Lord Chaitanya wouldn't like that. And Lord Chaitanya knew what was going on. He's super soul, so he came and started beating him. And Advaitacharya, so this was the most blissful experience. He started dancing and chanting because then he's in the subordinate position. So that's how we should take it. And it's a sign of. I mean, when I was coming up in devotional service, I joined too late to have some of these most nectarian, intimate, meetings with Srila Prabhupada on 22nd Avenue. So I was never chastised. I probably should have been, but I was confident that Prabhupada knew what I was doing, and I tried to be as strict as possible. But so many of the early devotees that especially we knew that Satsrup Das Goswami, that he got chastised several times, and we figured, this is a sign of his advancement. Prabhupada knew that he was, he was going to be able to absorb that and to feel great bliss by that doing that. That's the situation. Okay, any more locals? Okay, Vijay, you're on. Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Prabhu, my question is, why is it that if we are to remain enthusiastic, we must be rich?
We must what?
Must be wealthy, rich. Because in accordance with the translation of text 16, when we lose our wealth, we become morose.
Yeah, well, this is talking about materialists. This is all of these verses are about the forest of material enjoyment, right? It's not about life in the temple or in a Krishna conscious farm. No, the devotees feel happy when they're bereft of wealth. A perfect example is Sanatana Goswami. I tell that story recently about the gold. And his servant, Ishan, he was responsible. He said, well, maybe we have to pay some taxes or something, or to get through. So he had 8 pieces of gold, but he knew that Sanatana Goswami, he's now a Goswami, he wouldn't be happy with that, so he didn't tell him, right? So they came to an inn, and they couldn't get across the land. It was difficult terrain. So Sanatana Goswami requested the innkeeper, who must know the terrain, to help them across. He said, "Oh yes, no problem. You just take rest tonight, and we'll be." So he was a prime minister. He means he knows all the ins and outs. So as soon as they said, "Well, wait, what is he so eager to help me for?" And he suspected that something's weird. And so then when he asked Ishan, his servant, "Do you have something of value with you?" And Ishan said, "Yes, I have 7 gold coins." He actually had 8. He's lying. He thought it was very prudent to at least have 1 gold coin. So, what are you keeping this death knell for? Give me it. So he had the 7 gold coins, and he said, and so Sanat went back to the innkeeper and said, "Here, take this. You can have it." And the innkeeper thanked him. "Oh, thank you so much. I was going to kill you for it. We knew that I had an astrologer that informed me that you had 8 gold coins. And so now that you've given to me, I'm going to, you keep it, take it." And Sanatana said, no, I don't want it. Then we kill, you take it. I said, okay, and I'll take you. So he took him across. But when they got across the difficult terrain, Sanatana Goswami said, "Ishan, I think you have some balance left." And he said, "Yes, master, I have 1 gold coin." "Then take that gold coin and return home." So now Sanatana was free. He didn't even have a servant. He had no money, and he felt, oh, what a relief. Because he's sannyasi now, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then he met his brother-in-law or something, and he got this fancy chadar. And that also, he saw when he met Lord Chaitanya was looking at the fancy chadar, so he took that, gave it away on the bank of the Ganges to a poor mendicant, traded for his. Then finally, he's free from the last vestige. So just the opposite. The less material things you have and you can manage with, the better off you are in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, if you have too many material things, then that's going to be a source of attachment and worry for you. So it's just the opposite. So this verse is about materialists. That the government men, if you're hoarding money or you have money you're trying to hide, this usually happens. They'll take it. The government men, Rakshasas, will take your money. Then you had so much faith. Oh, this is for my old age. This is how I'm going to live. And now it's gone. Oh, so much anxiety. But for a devotee, it's that, oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. All I have now is this treasure of the holy name, which is the greatest treasure of all. Is that okay, Vijay Krishna?
Yes, better than okay, Dravida Prabhu, as usual. I do not know what adjective to use, but I will use it again. Breathtaking answer to my question.
Maybe give me your
Thank
email. I'll send you
much.
a few adjectives you can use.
I thank you for that, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
I'll tell them all kinds of adjectives, that are bad, that describe how bad the class was. Hare Krishna. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. All right, so we did 17 also.